doing?
morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am great, thank you. Healthy Mom University, this is Dr. Jenn, and she's going to be talking to us about winter wellness and how to keep our families healthy over the course of the cold and flu season. So before we get started, Dr. Jenn, will you just please introduce yourself and tell us about your medical practice?
Sure. Thank you for having me. It was nice to be invited here. So I'm really excited to be here and chat with you guys today. So my name's Dr. Jennifer Tice. For those who don't know me, I am a licensed naturopathic doctor. I went to Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. It's a 4-year medical school where we're trained in primary care family setting using all natural substances. So we're trained in the medical, integrative like world as far as reading labs, pharmaceuticals and whatnot. And then once we know what's going on, how to treat, we treat. First standard is with all natural medicine. But before let me back up for a second. I was actually in osteopathic medical school. And this is pertinent because I treat a lot of kids and kids is my passion. And so when I went to osteopathic school because I thought it was a more holistic approach to medicine. In theory, it really is. But as I sat there, I realized that it was all allopathically based. And so what I quickly realized is I'm going to become a doctor and I'm not going to know how to treat my future family if they get sick, right? And I knew at that time I had enough sense that antibiotics, steroids, and surgery weren't the answer to everything. And I felt like, well, how could I be a doctor if I don't know how to treat my own family? So I really questioned what I was doing. And that eventually led me to quit that medical school. And I found naturopathic medicine, thank God. And so I've been in practice for 10 years now. My practice is mostly pediatrics. I see newborns to beyond. And I do treat a lot of moms in that equation too, because I become very intimately familiar with the families and moms usually come on board at some point. And I do like to treat pregnancy, and pre-pregnancy detoxification and other stuff that comes up in that situation. So that's a little bit about my practice that I have right now.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you wear a lot of different hats in your practice. You're dealing with children, you're dealing with families, moms in particular. Obviously, you have such a heart for moms. And I would like to know more about, the cultural shift that you would like to see in our family environment as Americans that might lead us more towards overall health and wellness and vitality and longevity.
That is a big question because that's like we are trying to solve the world problems in like a small interview. But I think the most important thing that needs to happen for a culture shift, right? So like why I started seeing kids was if our planet's not doing very good, and without getting geopolitical, we have to do something. And it's really hard to change when you're 70, 80. And so I really like to deal with young kids because if we can teach them from a young age what to do and how to be healthy, then maybe you can start changing the world. See, you can't go out and you can't change the world if you don't feel good yourself. And so that's a common mistake that I think everyone makes, is that we try to affect the world around us, but inside we don't feel good. So we're not in line. And so what we need, I think the most important thing that we need is if you are already on the health path, then you're already there. But most people aren't. We're a small majority if you are awoken to, we need to do something to be healthy. And so what needs to happen is that shift, that something isn't right. That's the first thing that needs to happen, because you can tell someone to exercise and to eat healthy, but until they realize why and the motivation behind it, they won't do it. And so we need to look at statistics. Kids are very unhealthy these days. The incidence of obesity, of eczema, of asthma, of ADD, of mental disturbances, we're seeing more and more adult diseases in kids earlier and earlier, this is one of the first generations where life expectancy is decreased. And so something clearly is not right. And before that, we can, say, oh, you need to do this or need to do that. We just need to have that cognition that something is not right. We're not feeling good as a whole, as a family, or as a society, and we need to change. And so once you start realizing that, then you can start making the small changes, because it doesn't happen overnight. We've talked about this, where health is a long journey, but that first click that needs to happen so that the change becomes permanent, because without that click, it will fade away in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you. I think that mothers are the most powerful influencers on the planet that we have today. And yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, they're the key to the family. They're the key to the family unit. And we need to have the moms be healthy for the family. They hold the glue.
Right, exactly. And setting that example and having the energy, to want to make healthy food and to want to go the extra mile, which you need to do in order to keep your kids healthy. It requires a lot of energy and effort to get there,
Absolutely. So people will say like, oh, you're healthy, or they're healthy, or whatnot, but it's not easy being healthy. Healthy is hard work. And if you don't feel good, I mean, we all have our tired days where we just can't go the extra mile, but a majority of the days should be like where you feel good, because if you don't feel good, you can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And for moms, it's the most important thing.
Absolutely. So just piggybacking off that, what are some of the biggest things that you think every mom should have in her toolbox, in her healthy toolbox, in order to keep herself healthy? Because she has to take care of herself first before she can take care of everyone else.
Yeah, I see this a lot in practice. Like, moms will bring their kids in first, and I can tell that unless we get the mom a little bit more balanced, the kid's not going to fully get better no matter what I do. So it is so important that the moms and dads too are taking care of themselves. But we emphasize moms because oftentimes they are the glue. They're the ones planning the meals and cooking and making sure the environment is right. Some of them are breadwinners, but, so a lot of the men are also breadwinners. So every situation is different, but moms, for the most part, hold the glue. If there are single dads out there, this absolutely applies to them too, or dads that are in that role. But I think the most important thing is self-care. And there's three things that I think that are most important. There's a lot that we can do. And it can be overwhelming. So if we were to start from scratch, I would say the most important thing is diet. We will directly feel, our diet directly affects how we feel. And if we don't eat healthy, we won't feel good. So even though some of the unhealthy foods taste good and they're convenient and it's really easy, but if in the long run, that's going to prevent us from waking up and feeling good and making a healthy lunch for our kids and et cetera, we won't do that if we don't feel good ourselves. And so you have to eat right. You have to make choices. And everybody is so different. There's biochemical individuality in everyone's diet needs. And that's something that we work with. But ultimately, you need to test and trial and error what is going to make you thrive, because what one mom is going to thrive on is completely different than the other. But in essence, eating a clean diet with fresh food, fresh protein, no processed foods, getting out the junk, low sugar. So just eating a healthy diet will keep you feeling good. The second thing that I think is the most important thing is exercise. Exercise, I mean, there's a physiological role in it. It will make you feel good mentally. It will, keep your energy up. It physiologically helps the hormones, the relationships, the bonding. And it's also a time for you to be by yourself and let all this energy go that has been pent up, maybe from being in the house all day with kids, or dealing with their little attitudes and their little nuances and stuff. We take that stuff on. And so letting it go in an exercise, getting the heart rate up. I'm not talking about taking the dog for a walk or the kids to a park. That's great. but I'm talking about real exercise where the heart rate's going up, and we really burn this extra energy off, because if you can burn the extra energy off, you'll feel really good. And if you feel good, then then the family feels good. And so I think that, I'll be honest, exercise is the hardest thing I can get patients to do. But the ones that do it, or the ones that learn to force themselves to do it, they're the ones that feel the best. And I say force because you have to force yourself to get on the wagon. You have to show up for that first week or so until it's in your bio memory that you feel good doing it. It is a total mental game. But I think that is often not talked about. I hear, I go on little walks with my kids, but no offense, if your kid is 2 years old, you're not walking very fast, right? Like, I wouldn't put that in the exercise category. I'd put it into the enjoying your time outside category. And so I really think exercise is super important. The third thing that I think is really important that we don't focus on either, and this is not non-religious, but in some way, shape, or form, whatever you do, is you need to pray or meditate or sit by yourself and digest what's going on around you. So we spend all day, we eat and we digest food, and that gives us nutrients, but we also need to digest life around us. And if that's in some type of communication, getting in touch with God, or praying, or just sitting there and just letting the thoughts settle down, because that will just make you calmer and able to handle what's going on around you. So even if the kids are having a bad day, or your husband's grumpy, or something's going on, if you take that time, even 5 minutes, to just breathe and sit and pray, it will help in the long run. So I think that's really important too.
Absolutely. And I remember a few years ago, I was working with your husband, Dr. Tice, and that was one of the main things that he said to me. He's like, Christy, you just need to take 10 minutes, stop off at the beach, and just watch the waves, and that was actually a huge game changer for me in terms of my healing process, and through that whole year that I did that I made it a habit, and then I did it 5 days a week. After I would drop my kids off from school, I would just go to the beach and sit there and watch the waves and breathe and think. And it made a huge difference.
I know sometimes the simple things sound so well, how is that going to impact us? But it really does. It helps you just sit and digest life, and it doesn't have to be for long. And you don't even have to go anywhere if that's not in the schedule. But yeah, absolutely. It really makes a difference.
Yeah, very good. Such great advice.
Oh.
So what about for the kiddos? What types of things should moms have in their toolbox to keep their kids healthy?
Okay, this is a good question, because there's definitely a toolbox, what I call a natural medicine cabinet that I think that mom should have, and perhaps maybe we can jump on another call one time and talk about that in specific. But kids don't need a toolbox, right? Kids naturally by themselves are really in tuned, and they're in their natural state. They're just kids. So what we really need to do is focus on the environment around them, because if we put the environment around them that is getting them more in touch with nature and getting them back to their natural selves, of our innate human selves, they'll naturally fall in line. And so I think what we need to do is look at what's going around the kids, and why kids are getting so, I've never seen so many kids with anxiety as I have in the last 3 to 4 years. And that didn't used to be a kid problem. And so I always follow there's some vital principles that I follow with each case, and then also in a conversation like this. So the first one is take out the garbage, right? So take out the bad food, take out the excess sugar. Not only food, clean up the water, right? Because the most natural thing is what we eat and drink, and we need to get that into a more natural state than a chemically altered GMO pesticide state. And the water is super toxic now too. You're really lucky if you live in a spring or something, but that is just not the majority of us. So taking out some of these environmental toxins that are actually causing biological changes in us. So they're really not anyone's fault other than we're being poisoned. I'll get back to that, but the other part of a part of it is getting the nutrients in, right? So we have to get the right nutrients in as we're taking out the garbage. So we can't like clean out house, but then continue to put bad stuff in. And so we have to clean up the food, clean up the water, and then get the right nutrients in if supplementation is necessary. And that's a whole nother conversation we can have, but the diet is lacking in a lot of nutrients. So in today's world, it does seem that we need to supplement some nutrients. Minerals are one of them. So getting the right stuff in, taking the bad stuff out, and stimulating the vital force, the innate like force that they'll call in Chinese medicine prana or chi, or just that vitality that keeps us healthy. And ways that we can do that is return to nature, get outside, get them barefoot on the ground, get them at the beach if you live by the beach, get them out of the iPads and the smartphones. I think there is a medium road to that based on age and where they're at in school, because it is the modern world that we live in, but kids are on it way too much. So there's got to be some boundaries with that. You see the kids that play too much on technology. They're very like their reality is they're not. So when you put the tools down, they don't even know how to cope with like the world around them because they're so in the box. So that stuff is keeping that natural kind of flow of life like halted. The other best way to stimulate the vital force is going to sound crazy is like get them in some cold water. Get them. Hydrotherapy is a great way to keep the immune system super healthy and keep the vitality there. And so if you think about it, we're so used to like not stressing the body, right? We got our sweaters on and we're comfy, little hot tea and stuff. But cold water has been used in Germany for a long time, in Russia. And you'll see kids have the vitality. Actually, they don't think a lot of things are cold. So if you live by the ocean, like still get out there, even though the weather's a little colder. Or if you are in the snow, let them play outside. Let them be around the cold. The cold is a stressor on the system, and it teaches the body to be more adaptable. And so that in itself tunes the vital force to kind of just get the energy going and the flow going. And so when kids are placed in an environment where they're getting all the stuff they need in, a lot of the environmental toxins that we can control are out, and we're allowing that natural vitality to flow, they do pretty good. Of course, like, some kids have symptoms, and that's where the remedies and the herbs and stuff come in handy. Now that the obstacles are removed to cure. So, but kids in themselves don't need a toolbox other than the environment around them, I think.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I just have to mention Wim Hof. You're familiar with him?
Yes. I love Wim Hof.
So I made my kids watch the little documentary about him on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he uses, some bad language and stuff like that. So I kind of had to skip over those parts. But what a crazy, incredible person that guy is, that he's out there hiking mountains barefoot.
He's definitely an extreme version.
But didn't he do a study, like they tested him where they injected him with some sort of crazy bacteria, and he did his breathing, and they found that he was able to battle that bacteria. You know what I'm talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about is, okay, so he is a really incredible guy, and I encourage everyone to look at his work. He's influencing millions around the world. And the hydrotherapy it stemmed from Germany, a lot of the info. Wim Hof found it through like prayer and spontaneity. He had a pretty rough history, and he basically found God through cold water. And that has led him through this. He has influenced and healed so many people. But yeah, so he has done some crazy stuff, which I don't think is necessary to do to get the point across, but he's hiked Mount Everest in like shorts. He's known to take extremely long ice baths. He's really like an interesting guy, and I enjoy listening to him talk. He's really motivational. But they injected some toxins into his body, and using the breath and the cold air, he was able to basically clear it out, which directly speaks to the power of using cold applications and thought too, that you can heal yourself, because that was a scientific study that he actually cleared those toxins. So, but you take that into a practical sense, your kid gets sick you get sick using some of these techniques, you should be able to fight off a cold or a flu really naturally, using these techniques, and cold water is a big aspect of it. In naturopathic medicine, we have a treatment called constitutional hydrotherapy. And it's a very, very powerful technique, and it's using hot and cold towels, hot and cold water to stimulate the vital force. We always end on cold, and that's where you never want to end on hot. But that technique itself will cure cold or cure flu, or you've heard of maybe magic socks with kids. I recommend a lot, and we can get into all these later. But it's the same thing, using the cold water, and what it really does is, the physiological aspect of it is hot water dilates and allows the blood flow in, and then cold water like constricts and pumps the blood out. So you get a pumping effect in the body that will help rid the toxins from the system, right? Because the blood's flowing, it can clear the lymph and stuff. And then the other part of it is, which I mentioned, is it's putting the body in a state of stress where it learns to adapt. Because I don't know about you, but and we're in Florida, so to be fair to the Northerners, our cold water isn't that cold, but it's cold right now. And so if we get into a cold bath, even a quick cold shower, it causes us to adapt. And so if we can force ourselves into stress and adapt every day, then when we're around stressful situations, we tend to adapt easier. So our body isn't it goes into shock. And the same with when you get like a bacteria or a virus, your body has to adapt to it and to get rid of it. And so using the cold water to do that. So it has a lot of different applications, from when you're actually just physically sick to just overall, and like if you're trying to cure a chronic disease, or you're just trying to cure your mind. Because I think what Wim Hof says too is, you really can't be depressed if you're in cold water. when you're adapting to like a situation, like putting yourself in freezing water, you don't have time for the mind to tick and think about other stuff. And so it's an extremely important therapy that I think that a lot of us are scared to do, but I highly encourage people to try it. Have you tried it?
I have, yeah.
Did you do the ice bath?
I've done the ice. My husband made me do the ice bath, and it was very comfortable. It was very uncomfortable, but it was very invigorating. I will give you that.
How long did you do it for?
I think I stayed in there for like 35 seconds. That was like my max.
That's good. That's a start.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the cold showers and, the towels, the hydrotherapy with the cold and hot. I've done it, and it is very effective. I will tell you from my personal experience, it is very effective. And I will also tell you, my husband, as a surfer, he's in that water, and he's also very active. He works out at the gym, and he's the healthiest one out of all of us, and he's almost 50, and because of his lifestyle, being in the ocean and his activity. And I try to make sure he eats really well at home, but I have no idea what he's eating outside of the house, but I will tell you, he is super healthy because he employs some of those tools,
Yeah.
So very good advice. Thank you.
Yeah. Highly, highly recommend getting in the cold water. There's nothing like it.
Yeah. If you can handle it even for a few seconds, is that beneficial?
Yeah, I think you have to start somewhere. And so if you're just starting out, you have your hot shower and end on cold. So, and I say, for beginners, not for a second, like we got willpower, guys. Like, we're innately like really strong beings. And I think that the culture has like really like try to dumb that down. But I always say that, that initial shock when you go in the cold, like get that shock and then let it settle in. It only takes about 10 seconds. Start there. And then eventually you'll get to the point where you might not need a hot shower sometimes. Sometimes you really want it. It's cold outside or whatnot, but always end on cold. And eventually you'll get to a point where you might not even want the hot at all, because you just feel so, especially in summer months. So it's seasonal too. But yeah, start somewhere. We always have to start somewhere.
So yeah, so if you're listening and you want to try the cold therapy, so all you would have to do is take your normal shower, and then for like the last 30 seconds or something like that, you just hit the cold and just stand there and let it get you, and then go on about your day. Okay.
Yeah, and you will feel better after. I have never heard anyone say that they feel worse after. That's never been my experience.
Absolutely. All right. So, okay. I have just one more question for you, which is kind of a long one, but I want to know your top 5 tips for, keeping everybody healthy, not just in the winter season, but throughout the year. And I know you've already touched base on a lot of the really important ones, but what else can you offer our listeners that might help them?
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff I say is repeat all the time. I say the same stuff every day, but the best thing you can do is the top 5 things. I would say the number 1 is diet, and get fresh vegetables in, start cutting out processed food, processed sugar, processed diets, just eat clean food. And that's not saying you can't have, honestly, you can think of anything that you want, just make it homemade or make it from scratch, or get somewhere that's making it from scratch and using healthy ingredients. You can have comfort food. I'm not saying like deny yourself and become a raw foodist, but eat healthy. If you want to make cookies, make them homemade at home. You'll cut out a lot of the toxins they have to put in the food in order for it to sit on the shelf. And so, getting you, and it doesn't have to be, these huge Thanksgiving meals every day too. It can be really simple meals. So I think diet, you cannot be healthy if you don't have a healthy diet. So I have to include that in there, even though I've already talked about diet. You have to clean up the diet. I would say right in lines with that is cleaning up the water. The water is often overlooked, but there's chloride, there's pesticides, there's pharmaceuticals, there's hormones, because the more and more drugs that are getting into the water system, that's not getting filtrated because they're really small. So we need to filter the water and drink clean water. And then that is a very complicated situation, depending on if you're on a well or you're on a city water or you're renting or you're owning, but there's always a solution no matter where you're at. And so cleaning up the water is definitely, so what we get in our body, food and water, I would say number 1. Number 2, as far as just staying healthy and not getting sick, is watching processed sugar. This is a big one. And I had someone say to me yesterday, in fact, that they said, it's almost like sugar is more addicting than drugs. And I said, well, they've done that study. It is more addicting than drugs. And if you look at it, more people are addicted to sugar than they are heroin and cocaine and some of these other heavy drugs. Like, it literally is addicting. I don't know about you, but if you've ever had like sugar for like 3 days in a row, what happens? You start craving it like crazy every day. So you have to, and here's the deal. I'm not talking about like natural sugars. I'm talking about processed white sugar, usually from cane sugar. It's in everything that we buy. So again, it's reiterating like making stuff fresh from home, but cutting out the sugar. I think using dates, coconut sugar, maple syrup, stevia, some people like, some people don't, but there's a lot of other options that are really good. I'm not saying don't use those, but cutting out the white processed sugar is one of the easiest things you can do. So 1 teaspoon of sugar decreases the immune system for 3 to 5 hours. And so if you're sick, that's not good, because the immune system needs to fight. But just think about that. If you have a sugary, I don't even know, I'm so like sugary cereal in the morning, right? With sugar milk. And then, you have a snack that's sugar, and then lunch you have sugar, and then snack again that has sugar. So our immune system can't keep up, and eventually we'll fall ill. And so if you want to do one thing, is cut out sugar. Another thing that that I do, and we can go further, is I run a special food test, and that basically is super individualized, and it involves foods that we might think are healthy. For instance, some people get potato. That's not a food that you would think would come up on a food test, but it does on a lot of people. And so is learning your biochemical individuality on what foods aggravate your system. And some of it you just know. You'll eat dairy, or you'll eat some wheat, or and you'll know, and you cut it out and you feel better. And if you need some guidance and some testing, that's where that comes into play too, is to really determine what is like the food intolerance that you can't handle. But in that test, and this is an interesting kind of tidbit, there's a combination of food that always comes up that you should stay away from. About 80% of people get a fruit and sugar combination. So that it's basically, they can eat fruit and they technically can handle sugar, but not together. And for sugar, I mean cane sugar. And so what happens is your body just can't digest it. So it basically sits in the stomach and starts to ferment and causes a toxemia effect. And so if you remove sugar from the equation, you're most likely removing your food combination that you can't digest well. There's a 20% of the population that has a different food combination, but a majority of the people could really benefit from that tip. And it seems more, because sugar has a toxic effect on us, just eliminate cane sugar from the diet. Sugar cane, white sugar, brown sugar. Unfortunately, molasses is in that category too. Even though it has a ton of nutrients in it, it's still part of that category. But looking to your healthier sugars for your treats and whatnot and your sauces. The third thing is exercise and getting outside and being in nature. So as we get more and more into a modern age of technology, we're inside a lot, and we really need to connect with the air outside and the sun outside. And this is important for adults and kids. And adults, you can lounge around outside. We're good at that. Usually cocktails involved on that. But I'm talking about usually, so exercise outside is really good. So I always think that, well, unless you have to, it's always better to exercise outside in the fresh air. If you're going on a long walk or a run or something like that, try to get outside at least half of the time. And for kids, getting them outside and playing more. In today's world, we're just our kids are cooped up, we're cooped up. And as soon as you go outside and you're in nature, if you're lucky enough to live by trails, go hiking, if you can be in the ocean, whatever, we all live somewhere in nature that we can get away from everything. And I think that's it's important to reconnect the biological system back to nature. Right. So we all have a human resonance that coordinates with the resonance of the planet. And we're removed from that when we're inside on our technology and our boxes. And so we need to, if we can reconnect with nature, put your feet on the bare ground, sit, breathe, that will make a difference overall. And we kind of touched base on that, but that will make a big difference in health. The last two things I'm going to specifically mention for kids during cold and flu season, because I think that there is some practical tips that we can have. Sometimes the big picture might seem impossible, but so if you are in cold and flu season, your kid's getting sick a lot, the two top supplements that you could probably do is vitamin D and elderberry. So winter months, we, especially in non-sunny places like the Northeast, where we don't get a lot of sun exposure, supplementing vitamin D seasonally can really be effective to boost the immune system. And so it's about 1,000 IUs per year of age. So if you're a 2-year-old, that would be 2,000. And this could be depending on the season and where you live, or / the state of the immune system, the length of time and how you do it. But if you just want to protect your kid, it's winter, you want to just boost the immune system, give it some vitamin D for a couple months until all that passes. I think that's a really great thing you can do. My second favorite, it's in the category of a supplement, but it is kind of more like a food too. Medicine and food can merge when you're using natural medicine, is elderberry syrup. There's a lot historically in the Western herbal community. It's used just to protect you from the cold and flu. It boosts the immune system. It has the flavonoids, antioxidants, and then in like materia medica and in like scientific literature, it's known to prevent the flu and cold, and if you get it, to shorten the duration. So there's scientific like studies to back up what they already know, but it's one of the best things that you can do to give your kid to just boost their system in winter season, or if they're getting sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it tastes good because it's, it's kind of naturally sweet.
It tastes great. Kids have generally no problem taking it.
Yeah. Can we talk about supplements just real quick? And I know that that's a whole other show, but are all supplements created equal? And, as moms, how can we, make sure that the supplements that we're giving our children are not only safe, but they're effective?
Right. So unfortunately, no, all supplements are not created equally, especially because within the last 10 years, I would say there's been like a big industry boom. And so you can go on Amazon and like thousands and thousands of products are there. But and I think that it's getting hard to decipher where, like what is okay and what's not. And then it gets overwhelming. So this is where people like I come in to kind of guide you. But I would say, do not buy your supplements from Amazon. Okay. Think about how easy it is to get a knockoff purse when you're in like New York City, Louis Vuitton knockoff purse made in China, super easy, right? To get. If they can make a Louis Vuitton purse, how easy is it to make a label on a supplement? And so what some of the companies have found is they buy their own products from Amazon and they test them, and they actually, it's not even a product in the bottle. And so there's no quality control on Amazon. And so I would say that because Amazon is so convenient, that a lot of people have ended up going there, but I would be very careful on buying supplements on Amazon. The other thing is just knowing good companies and sticking to those companies. And unfortunately, you always kind of have to have your eye out. You can't really relax you can relax for a couple months, but then you might like have to just double check because labels change, companies change. They're always looking to make stuff cheaper and to make their price cheaper so they can knock it down for the retail price. So, but you want to. This is where I would have to spend like a whole course teaching how to read a supplement properly, but this is where I would find people that you trust that have studied the companies, and you use the companies that they are recommending. Some of my favorite nutraceutical companies right now are Thorne Research, Designs for Health, Pure Encapsulations. They did get bought out by Nestle, which is a whole kind of dilemma right now. But so did Garden of Life, and that was one that a lot of people are using too. And so I think that, for instance, I still use a little Pure, but I'm always checking labels to make sure they're not changed, because at some point they might change them because it's Nestle, right? They said that water wasn't right for humans. So we just have to keep our eye on that. I'm a little scattered here because it's such a big question, but the health food store generally has, so what's safe about the health food store is they're not knockoff. Quality control is there, right? Because they're buying it from distributors who the companies directly sell for. That being said, a lot of products that are available from the shelves aren't the best products. They're not the most easily absorbed. They're just the cheaper form of the product. So I have to plug in my cord. This is really embarrassing, but I don't want to lose you guys. When we got started, I had 96%. Okay. So for instance, if you go to the health food store, and to be fair, it's not a malicious thing. The people that are buying the supplements for the health food store might not know how to read labels, right? And so they might not be buying the best of the best. And that's usually what I see is they're not educated in what form of B12 they should stock on their shelves. They just trust the catalogs. And so if you're buying B12, you might find a good absorbable B12, which is methyl adenyl hydroxyl cobalamin. But if you see cyanocobalamin on the bottle, you can assume that that's like a cheap, and it's basically not going to get absorbed. And so they might have like 5B12s, and you look for the one that is the absorbable form. So they do have decent products. You just have to screen them pretty heavily. Let's see what else there's a lot of fillers in supplements. And so you always want to use companies that aren't using a ton of fillers. Like I've seen even crazy fillers like artificial dyes and stuff. And you get that with a lot of cheaper supplement companies too. So I would say as a general rule, please do not buy supplements from Costco, Walmart, Walgreens, because I've never seen a good product come from those shelves. I had somebody bring in a magnesium the other day, and it was like magnesium oxide. It had no clinical purpose to what they were using it for, and it had a ton of really bad ingredients in it. And so they needed to switch to a magnesium glycinate that had no other fillers on it, and that's what they were looking for in the appropriate. The other thing is the appropriate dose of it. So not only are you looking for the quality and the other ingredients you're looking for, the quality of the supplement itself, but then the dosage of it can be really low. For instance, if you buy something at Walmart or even sometimes the health food store. So I would say that if you're going to invest your finances in a supplemental routine, to get somebody on board that knows how to read it and guide you properly. So for me and my patients, it's a download that I give one time. I teach them how to read a supplement, what are good companies to use. And then they generally remember. If not, they can ask me, but what fish oil to use, what omega to use, what multivitamins I use, stuff like that. And then they kind of know whether they buy it from me directly or they buy it from another source, as long as it's not from Amazon. That's the most important thing. Is so stick with companies that you just trust or that have been recommended from somebody like me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent advice. Thank you. I just have a couple more quick questions. As we were talking, they're kind of coming up. We were talking about getting outside and getting in the sun. And when you go to the pediatrician, they're going to tell you, make sure you're slathering sunscreen all over your child so that they don't get burned, because skin cancer is a huge problem in Florida, right? So, and I'm not trying to downplay skin cancer or anything like that, but the importance of getting in the sun and the importance of vitamin D. Can you give us some safe recommendations for that?
Yeah. So this is kind of a hot topic too. I mean, it's not, I definitely will have different answers than a dermatologist, because I've seen some of them talk. And so the question is what came first, skin cancer or chemicals? And they seem to be correlated about the same time. And so here's what I see of it is our bodies are naturally supposed to make vitamin D from the sun. The sun plays an important role in just bringing light into the body and information into the body. And so the problem with sunscreen is it's loaded with chemicals. And so what I wonder is what's happening when you're in the sun and you have all these chemicals on you and it's baking on your skin. Is that in itself causing the cancer? And so in general, and you'll see this in the natural world, is a lot of people tend not to use sunscreen. And I agree with that for the most part. In Florida or in places where you're at a higher altitude, the sun's really strong and so the peak sun time is 10 to 2. So if you're going to be outside 10 to 2, we should give you some protection. One of the cleanest sources is zinc oxide. And they make a clear zinc oxide now, so you don't have to be that person with an all white face everywhere. But and if you're a surfer, you do an aging and vanity wise too. The sun, too much sun can cause wrinkles and some aging. So I think sunscreen is important in what circumstance you're in. If you're at the water park or you're in the sun on the beach all day, use some zinc oxide. I think that's very safe. After, when you wash off, use some oil. Oil in Ayurveda is very nourishing to the skin, and it basically coats the skin and protects it. And the outer layer of the cells is an oily phospholipid membrane too. So re-nourishing what it got dried up is a really good tip, I think. So you're in the sun all day, you've used zinc oxide, you wash off, put oil on, because that will kind of just add that protective layer. And that way you haven't blocked any of the nutrients that you get from actually being outside.
Mhm.
That being said, I've seen people at 7 a.m. in full on like gear and sunscreen. And I think that's a little bit crazy too. Like you should, like, it's, you're not really getting peak sun. I mean, 7 a.m. is like really early. So like what times are you going out is what's going to be like, if you're going for a 7 a.m. walk, maybe a little hat, or if your like eyes are sensitive, sunglasses, or nothing, you know, because there's benefit in absorbing the sun in the eyes too. The same with the afternoon. So I think that sunscreen is important given situations, but in general, we are overusing it and we are seeing it contribute to like lower vitamin D.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice too, because, you know, I am a mom of three and I want to protect them. I don't want them suffering unnecessarily later on in life, but then I also don't want to impede their body's natural ability to produce vitamins or to have that sunshine, you know,
Right.
that I it's so important to overall health.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. One company that I really like, they use a lot of zinc in it. It's called Badger.
Badger.
I have to see if that was the full name or if it's the Badger company, or but if you put Badger in sunscreen, you're going to get, that's one of my favorite cleanest sources of sunscreen. And so I think that if you're in the sun at certain times of day and you're going to be there for long amounts of time, I do like that company Badger, or just a standard zinc oxide.
Okay, excellent. Good.
Mhm.
Okay, one last question that popped up when you were talking about water, and I know you said it's a whole other show, but you know, okay, so clean water, that can be kind of vague, right? Because what does that exactly mean? Does that mean bottled water? Does that mean that you hook your sink up to a reverse osmosis? Like, what are just like the basics of getting clean water?
Okay. Very big topic, and I'm going to try and go through it pretty quickly and give a good overview of it. And so in general, stay away from bottled water unless you're on a road trip and you need like water. That's what bottled water is for. But a couple things. Dasani water, Coke fills it up from their tap water and they put it in a bottle and they make money off of it. It's free water. So you're better off just going to like the park and getting like just regular water if you're going to do that. There's no benefit in bottled water. Now there's like artesian waters and like some cool waters on the market, and those are pretty cool, but then that brings in the other part of the equation is there's a lot of chemicals in the plastic. And so during travel, they're on a truck, it gets hot in the truck, it starts to leach into the water, so we're exposing ourselves to unneeded like BPA, and it's beyond BPA, but a lot of chemicals in the water, especially breast cancer and things like that, we want to be careful of. Also stuff like fluoride, it's just not really filtered. Like I said, they use a lot of their tap water. Some of these, if you look up and it's like from a municipal city supply, like Dasani and some of these other places,
Mm-hmm.
it's just tap water. So you're getting water, but it's like still like not filtered. So I would say in general, I recommend not doing bottled water. Again, time and a place if you're on a road trip or you just are, you know, you're caught without your water bottle. So that aside, you have to filter your water. Unless you live on a pure spring water in a mountain where you've tested the water and it's great, then fine. But other than that, you have to filter the water. So there's 3 ways to do that. The king of water filtration is distilled water. The second best, and it's very close to the first, is reverse osmosis. And the third is, and which is also the best too, is a whole house system. So, but a whole house system is you have to usually save up money for it, and it's something you got to plan for. And if you don't own, it's not going to be the solution for you. So you want to so distilled water and RO water will take everything out. So that's why you're safe with those. And there's a lot of places now that have water machines. Like I know Publix, I know out west in the desert, there's all these water stores. They're all typically RO systems. So that's great. Like if you can't put a filter on your point of use on your kitchen or on your whole house, then what I do, like for our office, is I bought glass jugs off Amazon. Or I think about it on Amazon, and we just go fill those up at the water station. So it's RO water. Or if you do own a house and you do want to invest a little more, first is your point of use is the kitchen sink, is to install some type of filtration system on that. Usually RO is like your kind of king of the is what you install. Distilled water, you can get really good, cool distilled water filters. They're usually bulkier and bigger, or they're on the counter and they're really small. So you might use it for your drinking water, and you still have the RO on the point of view. So I would say you definitely have to filter the water in some capacity, and that's where it can vary between if you rent or own, or where your lifestyle is at this point. The second part to that equation is, and this is the argument against RO water, is that it takes all the minerals out. And that's absolutely correct. We cannot drink distilled water or RO water. However, we cannot drink fluoride, chloride, pharmaceuticals, hormones either. So we have to filter out, and then we have to re-add the proper minerals back in. And it seems overwhelming, but it's not. So natural spring water is 225 parts per million. And I'm not going to get like too scientific on you guys, but basically there's two options. You can buy like a good, just all around trace mineral. We use a product called pH Minerals from PRL Labs. There are other mineral sources that are just as good. But basically you're going to, once the water's been filtered, you re-mineralize it with a wide spectrum water. Another broad spectrum trace mineral is good Himalayan salt. So you're looking for a product that has 72 to like 86 trace minerals in it. It's going to have the broad spectrum trace minerals that you're putting back in the water. And if you think about it, water from a spring trickles down the rocks, and those rocks are mineralizing it. So that's kind of natural spring water, is pure water that's mineralized. And the parts per million is 225. So if you want to get really heady about it, if you're an engineer or something, you can get a TDS meter, total dissolved solvent meter, solid meter. They're relatively pretty cheap, and measure the water so that it will say 225, give or take. It doesn't have to be right on point. So you don't want to get it overly mineralized, and you don't want to get it under. And so once you learn, so you'll learn depending on, so what I do is I fill up a 5-gallon jug for my work, and we know how to remineralize it. So it reads about 225, and I don't have to measure it every time now that it's like 4 or 5 dropperfuls and it's remineralized. So you'll get into the flow once you can figure out like what is your mineral status. That's also something that's going to vary depending on the source of water. So I can't say just do 2 dropperfuls of trace minerals and filtered water.
I'm back. Sorry. I'm back.
So and that's why I encourage people to buy the meter, just to give you a little bit more power too, so you can see exactly where your parts per million is. But so just for tip, 225 parts per million, filter it, remineralize it, and make sure it's in that range.
Okay. That is excellent advice. Thank you so much. You are so brilliant, and I would spend hours talking to you, just kind of absorbing all of your information, because you are, in your own way, you are changing our culture. Every time you see a patient, you're shifting that mindset into a healthier mindset. So I'm so grateful for what you do. And please let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you, how they can reach out to you.
Okay. So our clinic website is newearthnaturopathic.com, and we can put that in the link somewhere. But that's the best way, is to read more on our website, and then our contact information is on that too. I also have an online store. It's called newearthpharmacy.com, and that is specialty products that, for instance, our minerals are on there, iodine, our flu remedy is on there, which we didn't even talk about. So if you even want to see what company I recommend for what multivitamins I use, you can kind of go on and see what I'm recommending. So that's probably the 2 best resources as far as just websites. I'll do one more plug. I just started a private Facebook group for healthy kids, and it's still really young and growing, but it's called Healthy Moms, or Healthy Kids, Healthy Moms with Dr.Jenn. And so we can link that too, but that would be another great way if you just want to get involved and get in the community. And so those are probably the top 3 ways to find me.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, and
thank you.
Really holiday season. And if you are listening and you want to get in touch with Dr. Tice, then you can, I'm going to put all of this information in the link so you can connect with her. And don't wait, because it's never you know, it's never a bad time to start getting on the healthy bandwagon, right?
That's right. Even if you get off, get back on. We always just got to start fresh. Every day we wake up fresh, so we always got to start fresh no matter where we're at.
Absolutely. And don't you do like a free 15-minute info call for anyone
Yeah,
who's
oh, always. So if you're interested in working with myself or my husband, we have free 15-minute consultations. Just gives us an opportunity to see if this is a case that we think that we can help you with, and for us to answer all your questions that you have, because people always have questions coming into what we're going to do with them, because natural medicine is a very broad, unknown term. And so, yes, if you are interested in becoming a patient, we do offer the 15-minute consultations.
awesome. All right. Thank you, Dr. Tice. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Thank you, Christy. Bye.
Bye.